think about what you're passionate about. And whatever you're passionate about, you'll be able to make a living doing it and you'll figure it out. And if you're not passionate about anything, just get on that merry-go-round of life and you can jump from one horse to another horse until you get on the gold one. But the bottom line is that, you got to get started. You have to get started somewhere.
Welcome to the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. Your guide on this journey is Amy Sylvis, ready to unlock the keys to a life of true abundance. We're diving into everything from financial freedom and optimal health to meaningful relationships, geographic freedom, and everything in between. It's about creating a life rich in experiences, purpose, and joy. Get ready for empowering conversations, expert insights, and real-life stories that inspire you to live abundantly. If you're ready for the secrets to an abundant life, hit that subscribe button now, and let's get started.
Secrets to Abundant Living podcast community. Boy, do I have a treat for you today. We started this podcast right before we started recording. I was like, I think it's going to take everything in my being to not shed a few tears because of how much our guest means to me. But for those who don't know me, my name is Amy Sylvis. I am the founder and CEO of Sylvis Capital. We connect investors to hands-off real estate investment opportunities. And I have Professor Dean Jim Ellis with us today, who I don't even know how to begin. I've known him for 25 years. Is that how old I am now? How old we are? Professor Ellis. He taught me at USC. He was my dean when I went back to get my MBA. Anyone who knows him, his reputation precedes him. Successful entrepreneur, professor, encourager, mentor, philanthropy master. I mean, just incredible. Anyway, I don't know if I can give you justice, Professor Ellis. I'm a little verklempt, but thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Amy. Great to be here.
I hinted a little bit about all of the great things that you're doing. Before we even hit record, you were talking about a think tank that you're involved in. Can you walk us through a little bit of your incredible resume and what you've been up to most of your life?
So my life started with probably, I would say, undergraduate school. And I had a very enjoyable undergraduate school at the University of New Mexico. And my father talked me into continuing my education to go to business school and get an MBA. I didn't want to do it. But as he said, they can't ever take it away from you. And he's right. And what does an MBA do for you 30, 40 years later? It just makes you stand up straighter. Because you competed against some of the best and you did fine. And so I got my MBA. I moved to California because my family was here. Boston was way too cold for me. I'm a golfer. Can't play golf in the snow, so I had to get out of there. Came to California and started my career. My career was in the retail industry. And I did that for 27 years. And at the ripe old age of 50, I was talked into changing my life direction by some very dear friends. And I changed my life direction and went into the academic world and became a professor of marketing at USC, which, you talk about finding your passion in life. I thought I had a passion running companies and building companies. My passion was really about building students and building the next generation. And it was during that time that I met Amy. I was a professor for 12 years and then was asked to be the dean of the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California in April of 2007, which was a job I never, ever wanted, never coveted, never thought about. I don't have a PhD, but as I got into it, it really isn't what you need in that particular environment. What you need is just an ability to tell a story and sell and connect with people, and something I just thoroughly enjoyed. So I was in the job for 12 years. I left the job in June of 2019. And in the ensuing 6 years, I have spent my time on boards of directors and boards of trustees. Currently, I'm sitting on 14 boards, 4 public companies, 4 or 5 private companies, and the rest are nonprofits, finishing writing a book, and totally enjoying my life. So it's really my third career. If you look at the first career being retail and second career academia, and third career being servant leadership. Keeps you young, it keeps you hopping, and it's great. Been fun.
So impressive. So impressive. I wish I could somehow convey to the listeners the impact that you've had on countless many. I am just one woman out of, I'm positive, thousands of students that had the ability to take classes from you. And just as you go through your career, just your ability to pivot, it sounds like follow your heart, what brings joy to you, is impressive. Many people are either too scared to do that or are maybe too locked in or maybe even rigid thinking. What gave you the courage to leave you undersold yourself, a wildly successful career to go into academia? That's a pretty big leap and, may have humbled you. You turned out to be amazing at it, but different skill set, I would imagine. What gave you the courage to do that?
Well, it was pretty scary, I have to admit.
Okay.
So people may remember the cartoon series of the Roadrunner and the Coyote. And Wile E. Coyote would chase the Roadrunner, and he'd run off the cliff and look straight down and see the canyon floor, and they crashed in the canyon floor. And I always felt like I was the coyote, and I just better hope the parachute opened before I got to the canyon floor. Fortunately, the parachute opened. So I had a group of friends that said to me one night, I was involved in a group called the Young Presidents Organization, and my pals said, we think you should do something more global. What are your plans for the next 25 years of your life? And I said, well, my plans are buy companies, sell companies, run companies. That's all I know how to do. That's what I was trained to do. That's what I know how to do. We think you should do something more global. What does that mean? You figure it out. And I said, well, I could go broke doing this. They said, can't think about money. Do something you're passionate about. I said, yeah, but I have a family of 5 children and a wife who's accustomed to a nice lifestyle. And for me to come back with pretty low salaries, not exactly, I won't be a hit on the home front. But they said, why don't you figure out, if you had a clean sheet of paper, what would you do for the next 25 years of your life? And that's really an exercise everybody should do at various times in their life. When you get out of school, later on in midlife. And I did it. And it was interesting. I spent 30 days just talking to people and, what do you do? Why do you like it? What does your family say? What would you do if you get out of it? How do you get out of it? And I learned a lot about people, but I learned a lot about myself. So I went back to this group of YPO friends and I said, if I had a clean sheet of paper, and I don't, because I have mortgages and tuitions and, those types of things. But if I had a clean sheet of paper, I would do one of 4 things. I would, to help people about to go through the speed bumps and potholes of life that I had already been through, and maybe give them just a little warning as to what the pothole is going to be ahead of you so you can avoid it. And I would do it in the form of teach, speak, write, or consult. And one of my very close pals at the time stood up and just said, well, go do it. And I said, let's see if we can understand this properly. I said, I only have an MBA. I can't really teach at a college level because I don't have a PhD. As far as speaking is concerned, who's going to listen to what I have to say? Because I'm just an old retail guy. I can talk about marketing, but that's pretty boring. And you can't make a living off that like Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Something, or Tony Robbins walking on hot coals, or Deepak Chopra and East versus West existential and that type of stuff, which the successful speakers and authors do. I didn't have that. And as far as writing is concerned, I'm not a very good writer, but I could, if I wrote a book, what would it be about? And, who's going to read it? Well, there's 66,000 books written every year. Who's going to read that book? So, in consulting, this may upset some people that are listening. Consulting is for those who can't do it. If you can do it, you do it. If you can't, you hang out a shingle. It would say Ellis and Associates. You got to say Associates just so they know there's more than one of you.
Yep.
And you tell people what to do, and then you go away and they have to do it. And you don't have to live with the results. And I think that life is a place where you have to live with results.
Yeah.
You've got to take accountability for what you do in life. So I didn't have a clue what I would do. I thought it was a kind of a cool exercise. And they said, well, you have to do that something within 6 months. And I said, no, wait, I thought this was an exercise. And they go, no, you have to do this, make this happen. So I was glad to get out of there that night and go back home and be in more control of my life than having these guys tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
I told my wife about it that night. And she said, oh, I think you ought to do that. And I said, what's that? She says, I don't know, but you'll figure it out. And I really didn't know what that meant. How do I start getting out? Life? Am I going to make any money? Am I going to make a living? A week later, a USC part-time professor in marketing called me for breakfast. And he said, have you ever thought about teaching? And I said, I can't. I don't have a PhD. He said, no, you don't have to. You have an MBA. You're fine. It's all about teaching. There's no research involved, but there's no tenure involved. I said, well, where I come from, there's no such thing as tenure anyway. And I'll go interview. So I went down and interviewed with 3 professors, 2 of whom I would work with later on in my career. And somehow I got the job. What was most interesting there is you think about the salary of a starting professor and the salary of what I was coming away from. That was a bit of an issue, but we're just going to have to figure that out. We're going to figure that out. So here's where I felt like the coyote stepping off the cliff and hoping the parachute would open, because I was leaving behind a pretty good lifestyle.
Yeah.
I owned 3 companies, and over the next 6 months, we sold them. But I got into it and found that my passion was really being in the classroom and the interaction with students. I loved the undergraduate students because they were trying to figure out where they were going. The MBAs have got it figured out for the most part, but the undergrads just don't. And it was just fun to get in conversations with them and trying to help them understand how to get a direction. And so that's what got me started on the academic career, how it worked. Was it a hard change? Not necessarily. It wasn't that hard once I accepted the pattern of academia, meaning you got to be there at 10 o'clock on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Don't be late. And you can't call anybody and say, I'm running late. You just have to be there.
Yes.
So it's a little bit different than it would work when you were running the company. But it's okay. It worked out great. And, there obviously were a few stumbles along the way early on, just because I over-prepared for a class, then went into the class and found we were going a different direction. But that happens. But it was really a very enjoyable experience. And I loved being in the classroom. So it was a big change.
To say the least. And what I heard from you, some takeaways there, I'm sure our listeners are hearing this as well, is having a group of people that have your best interests at heart, but also are willing to push you and being open to peers and those who have your best interests at heart, maybe pushing you outside of your comfort zone, and how important that can be in life. I love the image of the Wile E. Coyote just kind of taking that step, because I'm sure that's exactly how that felt. And who steps away from a successful private sector career to really do that and give back, but having peers, and obviously Gail being supportive, and you just having that kind of spirit of an entrepreneurial spirit, truly, of let's see what's next and let's check this out, is just incredible.
Well, I have a major flaw personality-wise in that I'm not very good at saying no.
Okay.
Well, that's number one. I don't say no very well at all. But you're right about having a group of friends who, in a particular setting, the agenda is you.
Yeah.
They really get nothing out of this. They were just telling me things. They were the consultants, back to the consultants. They could tell me what to do and not have to take responsibility for anything. No accountability. But they were very, very strong in their thought process.
Yeah.
And I had to give them a lot of credit. And was it scary? Yeah, but I had the support of both family and friends. And I think that those relationships that get built up over the years come back to help you. And I've always felt that if I can help somebody and maybe I need help down the road, I could call on them and they would help me back. And so I think that that's really important. It's hard. And I've actually launched a number of groups, people that wanted to get some career help. And I said, okay, let's get 5 of your best friends and sit around a kitchen table or a dining room table and you tell them what your thinking is and let them, because they know you well, let them kind of give you some advice. So yes, having that group has been very, very, very significant to me.
I hope to convey to our listeners what it was like to have you as a professor. So everyone has this context now of this successful businessman at USC who'd sold companies, who'd opened a bank or two. I mean, you've done a lot, and having an actual businessman teaching you in a business classroom, because for those who may not know, sometimes you get PhDs, nothing wrong with them, but they may have had a lot of academic experience, which is great. But having this real world experience that you brought to the classroom, I know not just for me, but for all of your students, had such a tremendous impact. You brought in speakers from your network to give us a flavor of, different career paths. We did site visits. I mean, you somehow packed into I think, hour and a half, class. We took a field trip. We went to see all sorts of different businesses. You gave us case studies. It really stood out in terms of, just what we were exposed to at the business school as undergrads. So much so that some of us took several classes from you, myself included. For those who don't know, at least back in the early 2000s, we were tasked at the Marshall School of Business as undergrads to have an emphasis. Did you want to emphasize in finance? Did you want to do organizational behavior? Did you want to do marketing? Or did you want to do what a lot of us did, myself included, and do an Ellis emphasis, meaning you didn't just do marketing, but you took a whole bunch of classes from Professor Ellis, because exactly what you're seeing here, he lived out exactly what you taught, of just making us feel like anything was possible. It was so powerful.
Well, first of all, anything is possible. There's no question about that. But secondly, I could not have done what I did 10 or 15 years before that. I had to have that treasure trove of experiences that you get in business, where you get your teeth kicked in a few times and things don't work and things do work. And, you learn from different situations. So my thought was, okay, let's take advantage of that and pass that on. Now, you don't think about a lot of these things when you're preparing to go into a class.
Right.
You're about, okay, what are we talking about today? What do we do today? And then you get in there and all of a sudden you're off on a story that you haven't even thought about. And
yeah,
that story, we all learn from stories. We learn way better from stories. And if I were to say back then, what are the 5 best ways to market your product? Back in those days, you would have said radio, television, newspaper. Today, you would say social media, influencers, etc. Those things are important, but when you're in the middle of the battle, in the business world, you're not sitting thinking about theory. You're just trying to react quickly, make decisions quickly. And the hardest thing we do as business people is make decisions. And we have to make decisions. We can rectify most of them. If they're bad, we can change them. The only decisions that I think should be kind of ironclad are who your partner is in life. And that one, you probably would like to start that off and not ever think about changing it. But otherwise, you can change any decision. You can back away from it. And I think that's really important, was to teach people how to make decisions, how to stand up for what their thoughts are. And in the business world, that's what we have to do. And we make a decision to go out the front door, and everybody else says, let's go out the back door. Well, you're the leader. You have to tell people you want to go out the front door. Come on, let's go. And there's no time for discussion. Hopefully you thought it through and you've taken into consideration all the variables. Then you say, we're going out the front door. So those kinds of things were important, and they're not in books, not in theory. And typically the PhDs that don't have the business experience, they're going to teach the theory, which is important to understand. It's really important to understand the theory, but then how does that theory get applied in the real world? And so I kind of looked at my lot in life is to explain what the real world looked like and to expose our students to that real world as much as I possibly could.
Have you ever thought about having multiple streams of income? Instead of relying on just one stream of income where you're trading your time for money, how would you like to free up more of your time and live a more abundant life? As a listener of the show, you're invited to attend one of our upcoming trainings, where I'll give you an inside look into how you can add passive income and get all the other perks of recession-resistant real estate investing without the headaches of being a landlord. I'll also be sharing some hidden mistakes to avoid and the criteria I personally look for when evaluating potential investment opportunities. To reserve your seat for free, go to sylviscapital.com/webinar. Again, that special link to reserve your seat for free is sylviscapital.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you on the training. And now back to the show. So much so that our finals were sometimes you'd give us an article from the Wall Street Journal and say, comment, or what would your strategy be? I still use some of those kind of techniques today, the broader frameworks of, because again, this wasn't something you couldn't prepare for those tests, right?
Right.
It's not possible. You have to take all of the experiences, the field trips, the speakers, the stories that you taught us and try to implement that you can't study. You have to be present. You had to be engaged. And I mean, it was impossible not to be, but all these years later, I'm so in awe because I would imagine, did you get any pushback? I don't know if we're doing a little inside baseball here, but do you get any pushback about kind of how you taught? It was a bit unconventional. Did anyone care or was this celebrated?
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
First of all, one of the tenets that I use in all this stuff is life is not a multiple choice. You got to make a decision. You got to go with it. Okay, that's number one. Now, as far as pushback's concerned, the only pushback I ever got was somebody said, you can't have more than 10% of the students grade B class participation. And in my class, it was 30 or 40% because it's not about me talking. I know what I have to say. Let's hear what the students have to say. And they've got to raise their hand and they've got to ask the questions. And they've got to make the statements. So people said that, but nobody ever said, don't do that. They just said 10% of the grade should be class participation. I said, well, not in my classes. I'm sorry, we're going to go a different direction. So that was the only pushback I ever got. And I think that, they'd have professors sitting on my classes and many times they go, how did you do all that without any notes?
Yeah.
You just would start talking and the kids would start talking back to you. And then all of a sudden you're discussing strategies and implementations and that kind of thing. That's what we wanted to do. So it was probably not normal college classroom, but then again, that's not me.
But wildly effective. And I know I've told you this, but and our listeners know, I live with cystic fibrosis. Going to college, planning for a career wasn't something very many people encouraged me to do. Yet here I was, and you knew, let you know ahead of time, kind of the battles that I might have, as a student in your class, but you never treated me any different. There was never, if I raised my hand and talked about my future career or what I decided that I wanted to do, there was never any different treatment about, hey, Amy, is that going to be possible or is that within your capability? You really allowed me to imagine and dream what I might be able to achieve, even if the odds weren't in my favor. And I still carry that to this day. I'm incredibly grateful for how you encouraged me. And I know my story is echoed by thousands of other students.
Well, I think the thing there, and you're right about that, but your goal was to worry about the cystic fibrosis. My goal was not to worry about it, but was to help you open up your aperture and see that there were so many opportunities out there that if you could overcome the CF, you could get to. You had to solve the CF problem, and you did. And you worked really hard at it. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I remember you first told me about it. You said, I'm going to cough a lot in class. If I cough too much, I'll get up and leave, which you never did. But it never was anything that bothered me. I mean, you just were another student with an affliction. I wasn't thinking about the fact how serious that affliction is and was, which it is. But you handled it, and you all of a sudden started blossoming like a lot of other students do. And we have to watch that flower open up. And that's what it's all about.
Thank you. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. It means a lot. Well, and just kind of close the loop. I don't mean to make this the Amy story, but you encouraged me so much that I actually got to go back and get my MBA. And I would have never, ever imagined that my favorite professor would then be my dean. And I got to walk across the stage in May of 2009 and get my MBA degree from this professor who encouraged me and allowed me to dream. And I mean, it was just such a special moment. Hopefully I'll get my editor to include that clip because we have it. of doing that. But what drives you to give back? We talk about abundance, Professor Ellis, and you have that in spades. I got to film a video honoring you at the Boy Scouts of America, event. They're just,
Right.
you are abundance. You encourage so many people, you give back. What drives you? What keeps that going?
I think that what's most important to me is a little different than many people. A lot of people think about material things. I don't. I think about relationships.
Yeah.
And those relationships start with my wife and my kids and my friends. But then it goes to the 24,000 graduates of USC who have my name on their diploma. And, that's really important to me.
Yeah.
That if my name's on your diploma, you damn well better be doing the best you can. I'm going to come back and haunt you. But I always used to tell the students that I'm going to know you're a real success when you're on the cover of Forbes or Business Week and not in an orange jumpsuit.
Yes.
But it's relationships, and those are fleeting, and they can be really fleeting. They can be really, really hard to maintain. Whereas something material, you can put your hands on it, you can touch it, you can look at it, but it's not significant. When you leave this world, you don't leave this world with a headstone that says, here lies Jim Ellis. He had a lot of things. No, that's not important. So the important things are the relationships you have with your family, with your pals, and with those around you, and how you might have impacted them. And that's really important to me more than anything else. So any way that I can help people, I will do that. And without expecting anything in return. And the reward will be just what maybe we can do for them to get them started on a path or get them to change paths or whatever they have to do.
Remarkable. I mean, I think about raising your hand to teach and then raising your hand to be a dean. I think the only non-PhD dean of a top 20 or 25 business school, if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time it was, and I think, which is too bad for a lot of schools, because they really, it's interesting, is I told one professor who was getting mad at me about something I did. I said, look, you were trained to think, to write, and to teach.
Yeah.
I was trained to sell, to manage, and to lead. Those are completely different skill sets. And as a dean, my job was not to write papers and to teach classes. My job was to raise money and set a vision for an institution and deliver on that vision.
Yeah.
And raise the money to deliver on that vision and help hire the right people to make that vision come true. And so it was really just one of the coolest jobs ever, was to be able to do that. And I was lucky that my superiors would just leave me alone and let me do it. And they said, just go do this. And I said, man, I get to do that every day. How cool is that? So yeah, it was fun.
And I think most people would consider you a reasonable man to just, when you were done with that, ease into retirement, enjoy your life. Yet you're on all these boards, nonprofits, publicly traded companies. What drives you? I understand the relationship part, but you don't have to hassle with all this.
Well, first of all, I've totally flunked retirement. So I've completely flunked retirement. Retirement is, as my wife and I agreed, that word is not in our vocabulary, but I have completely flunked retirement. And I think it's what keeps you young. You keep going. I've traveled. I've been to 108 countries. I've been around the world a bit, but it's being able to help other people.
Yeah.
Keeps me going.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Some folks, Professor Ellis, even some of the younger folks, you probably have been exposed to this, seem to be, and maybe it's just me being 44, but there seems to be a little bit of a lack of direction and some hopelessness. And I get it. I mean, the economies can be tough, but for those who are looking to find their way in life, maybe money isn't necessarily their North Star. They want to give back. What sort of advice would you give folks who feel a little directionless?
Well, that's a really good question. I think, first of all, think about what you're passionate about. And whatever you're passionate about, you'll be able to make a living doing it. Mm-hmm. And you'll figure it out. That's number one. And if you're not passionate about anything, just get on that merry-go-round of life, and you can jump from one horse to another horse until you get on the gold one.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that, you got to get started. You have to get started somewhere. I never thought about this when I was 21 years old and graduating from school. And I never thought at 23 or 2, whatever I was. I never thought about any of that stuff. I just thought, well, maybe I could get a car and an apartment and have fun. And all along the way, it's been fun for me. I mean, I've enjoyed it. And I still now, go retire and have fun. Well, I'm flunking retirement and still having fun. So, it's an okay thing to be able to do that. It's great. I like it.
You are so inspiring still to this day. I still feel like a student enthusiastically sitting in the front row of your classroom, and to be able to get some of your wisdom all of these years later and to be able to share with our audience. I'm just so grateful for your time, Professor Ellis, and how you've impacted me and the tens of thousands of others. Gosh, I'm just students worldwide. I'm sure it's millions, but just really appreciate everything that you are, Professor Ellis. Thanks again for your time today.
Been good to be with you and enjoyed it.
How can folks get a hold of you if they want some goodness and be in touch with you as well?
Well, I think that's pretty simple. It's just a simple email and jgellis1947@gmail.com. Pretty simple.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining us for this amazing podcast. Please make sure to reach out to Professor Ellis if you'd like. I think you're going to get a whole slew of emails. Hopefully we don't make you regret giving out your email, but great to see you. And thanks again.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will empower you on your journey towards abundance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps others discover the secrets to an abundant life too. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, Amy Sylvis. Keep striving for your goals, nurturing your relationships, and embracing the adventure that is life. Until next time, we wish you an abundantly fulfilling day.
My name is Jim Ellis. I'm the Dean of the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California. Been in this job for 2 years, and I love my job because I have 5,700 students that are brilliant young minds, and I get to spend every day with them.
I don't know if I really have the words to describe Dean Ellis.
Amy Sylvis was a student of mine as an undergrad, and she walked into me the first day of school, and she explained that she had cystic fibrosis and that there would be times in class when she might have to get up and leave because she had a coughing spell. And please don't be alarmed.
I met him when I was an undergrad here, when I was probably just 19 or 20 years old.
She sat in the very front row of my class, so I knew every time she coughed, and I'd panic a little bit when she'd cough twice. But so other than that, she's just a normal, highly enthusiastic, very dedicated, hardworking student.
He gave me so much inspiration in terms of what I could accomplish in my career and just as a person as a whole.
And we all know the amount of work she has to put in before she gets to school, before she goes to bed, all the things she has to do in her life just to be normal. And you have to respect somebody the way they put in the work ethic to get that accomplished.
He just has this attitude of, you can do anything as long as you put your mind to it.
She and I have had a very good relationship for many, many years, and she's a very special young lady, and she's pretty terrific. I'm going to be really proud of her walking across that stage for graduation.
Being here 6 years later, shaking his hand as I walk across the stage to receive my MBA, it's really hard to wrap my mind around, but it's going to be very joyful and exciting and incredibly meaningful as well. He's such an amazing man.